All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Raha Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in this truth in all sincerity. Jeremiah chapter 5, verses 26 through 27, and I'm going to read this in the NLT. Among my people are wicked men, who lie in wait for victims, like a hunter hiding in a blind. They continually set traps to catch people. Like a cage filled with birds, their homes are filled with evil plots, and now they are great and rich. Okay, this is an article off of pbs.org. And this was published April 16th, 2026, which was just a couple of hours ago. Erica Schwartz, former Deputy Surgeon General, nominated to be the next CDC director by Trump. President Donald Trump on Thursday nominated Erica Schwartz, a former Deputy Surgeon General, to be the next director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. In a social media post, Trump described Schwartz as incredibly talented and said she is a star. The Atlanta-based CDC, which is charged with protecting Americans from preventable health threats, has been in turmoil since Trump returned to office more than a year ago, with a succession of mostly temporary leaders. The agency is overseen by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who had promised not to change the nation's vaccination schedule. But shortly after taking office, Kennedy said he was going to investigate the childhood vaccine schedule and went on to attempt a substantial rewrite of vaccine recommendations for kids. Some of those efforts were put on hold recently by a federal judge. The administration's first pick to run the CDC was former Florida Congressman Dr. David Weldon, but his March 2025 Senate confirmation hearing was canceled an hour before it was to begin. Weldon said at a time that he'd been told not enough senators were willing to vote for him. So I'm going to scroll down here a little bit. So let's start right back from here. Since then, there's been a revolving door in an agency leadership, with the short-term role of acting director being passed from one Washington-based HHS official to another. National Institutes of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya has been overseeing the CDC the past several weeks. During a House Appropriations Committee hearing Thursday, Kennedy said the new CDC team was extraordinary. I think this new team is really going to be able to revolutionize CDC and get it back on track, he said. Schwartz holds multiple academic credentials, including both medical and law degrees. Her career has largely been spent in military uniform, including in a leadership position at the U.S. Coast Guard, where she oversaw the organization's system of 41 clinics and 150 sick bays. She later served as Deputy Surgeon General, where she helped lead uniformed medical and health professionals posted at the CDC and government health agencies that serve the general public. I'm going to stop there. Just basically wanted to get into who the new nominee was and a little bit of her credentials. And once again, the new CDC director, her name is Erica Schwartz. Let's take a good look at her here. So, as you can see, she is in the Navy, and this is a good picture of her here. Former Deputy Surgeon General Erica Schwartz, and she's nominated as the new CDC Director, Center for Disease Control. There she is again. See if I can get one more picture of her. So that is who Trump has nominated here. And once again, she has been nominated by Trump to be the new director for the Center for Disease Control. Basically, what I personally think is that Robert F. Kennedy has not been, for lack of a better word, diligent enough in pushing pushing the COVID-19 vaccinations and promoting it to where it has gotten some type of, there's a stigma attached to these particular vaccines now, and the overwhelming growing sentiment is these things were bad. This particular vaccine was not, the public wasn't briefed or educated enough on these particular vaccines. And so you're seeing a high number of people who not only passed away after taking those particular vaccinations, but there's a lot of people now who just refuse to get it. Like, there's no way in the world they're getting it. And even though Kennedy was not, and he didn't have that position back then in 2019 and 2020, he is overseeing this position now. And it doesn't look like he's really pushing it the way they would like him to. So what do? They go out here and they pretty much nominate the so-called black woman to do it for them. Let's scroll back up a little bit here. I want to read this particular tweet. Trump's pick to head the CDC, Erica Schwartz, will likely be a disaster. Schwartz led nationwide C-19 vaccine deployment. In her long track record of directly issuing rights, crushing civilian and military vaccine mandates, including mandating injection of smallpox, anthrax, and flu vaccines into U.S. forces, and discipling those that refused. That should be disciplining. He accidentally put discipling, and that's what threw me off. And this disciplining those that refuse reflects she lacks the basic ethics and morals to lead the CDC. And that's exactly what I was stating just now about Robert F. Kennedy. Robert F. Kennedy has not been really pushing these vaccines the way that they would like him to. So the elite are feeling that they're a little bit behind schedule here. And so in order to remedy or rectify that particular situation, you bring in somebody, basically an attack dog. And we know that the so-called black woman, the powers that be, Esau likes to use her as an attack dog. She is the weaker vessel. And this goes back to Genesis 3, where the serpent was able to manipulate Eve, and she later in turn was able to convince her husband Adam as well to eat of the forbidden tree. So this is what you're seeing again. It's always been like this, where Esau understands and Esau knows that he can use. He's always been able to do it. Once again, going back to Genesis chapter 3, he's always been able to use the so-called black women to help push his agenda. She is his attack dog. And I don't mean that about every single black woman, so-called black woman walking the earth, but pretty much there's a strong, huge, population, a huge majority of them that fit that description. And this is what you're seeing right here. So one of the more controversial issues of our time, which is these particular vaccinations. When you fall a little bit behind schedule, you get the so-called black woman and put her in that position to help get things back on track. And it also gives you an avenue of escape to where if things just go completely downhill from there, you have an easy target now. the so-called black woman. Oh, we put a who I thought was a qualified black woman in position here, and she messed up. Understand something. Trump has been accused of getting rid of damn near like every so-called black person, male and female, that was in the previous administration in certain cabinet positions. Trump pretty much eliminated all of them. I think the only one that remained was Ben Carson, if I'm correct. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on that, but Trump eliminated, he pretty much fired all of them when he got into office the second time around here. And so, and the reason being was, he was, hey, I'm against this DEI thing. I'm against, it should only be whoever fits, whoever is most qualified for the position, so we can get rid of some of these DEI mandates and stuff like that. But for a controversial issue like this, DEI, he doesn't mind reinstating it for this. She's qualified. So she's a so-called black woman. We can bypass the whole DEI thing because she's qualified here. But it's going to be for something this controversial, pretty much setting the stage to be able to point the finger when this thing runs amok here, when it goes haywire. So I'm going to continue reading. This agency does not need another cheerleader for industry. It needs a regulator over industry. Her prior promotion, let alone mandates, of nearly a dozen different vaccines. See, she's all for making this thing mandatory. This is the second time here in what, just pretty much just 3 paragraphs where, they're stressing, the guy who posted this, Aaron Siri, he's basically stressing the fact that she is one of these people who will mandate something. She will make it 100% mandatory that you have to do it. And this is the time that we're entering. And, it's not just all about vaccines, digital currencies, which is going to lead to the MOTB. Right about now, they're not going to be keeping people in certain positions who are straddling the fence. People who can't make up their minds, or people who want to be lenient and say, oh, well, we're not going to force you to do it. You still have an option. No, they're going to start putting people in positions that are going to mandate these things. They're going to make it mandatory now. They're going to start speeding this up because, like I said a few minutes ago, they're probably feeling like they're a little bit behind schedule here. So I'll start that over. This agency does not need another cheerleader for industry. It needs a regulator over industry. Her prior promotion, let alone mandates, of nearly a dozen different vaccines leave little hope she will objectively oversee CDC's vaccines program, which has, between 1986 and 2026, gone from 3 injections to 29 injections, including in utero, by an infant's first birthday. While chronic childhood disease has gone from under 10% to over 40% of children, most related to immune system dysregulation. For examples of Schwartz mandating vaccines, and this is the first time I'm clicking on this, so just please bear with me. If I gotta, I was going to try to speed read through some of it first, but all right, so U.S. Department of Homeland Security, United States Coast Guard, Commandment Instruction, Coast Guard Smallpox Vaccine Program. All right, this is way too much to try to read for this particular video here. So I'll go back, but once again, like I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, she is one who is hardcore when it comes to making things mandatory and mandating certain things that where it looks like, previous personnel who were in these positions, they may have left it optional. They're needing someone here now who can pretty much make this thing a normal part of, the normal routine of life now. You're going to get this whether you want it or not. It becomes mandatory. And that's what she's here for. So for increase in vaccine schedule, the 29 injections in 2026. If anyone is interested in going to any of these links, once again, this is his particular page here, Aaron Siri, You see his at, this is x.com, at Aaron Siri, that's spelled SIRISG, at Aaron Siri. He has approximately 278,000 followers. So, but I'll go back to the article I was looking at. So if anybody is interested in seeing what he's posting here, here is some of the links. And once again, that is his page there at Aaron Siri SG. And that is on x.com. And so, like I said, though, right now, the elite, they're going to start really, buckling down on this thing here. And this is the whole purpose of starting to nominate and put people in positions that no longer are going to make it optional. They're going to really push to start mandating things. So that is for the Center for Disease Control. Let's take a look at what's happening in Europe right now.
One-third of the European population is not vaccinated. These are 150 million people. This is a lot. And not each and everyone can be vaccinated. So there are very small children, for example, or people with special medical conditions. But the vast majority could. And therefore, I think it is understandable and appropriate to lead this discussion now. How we can encourage and potentially think about mandatory vaccination within the European Union. This needs discussion. This needs a common approach, but it is a discussion that I think has to be led.
Okay, and you heard that, just like I mentioned a few minutes ago. Right about now, the elite, they're really trying to speed this thing up. So the days of making things optional, you see, when C19, when 2019 rolled around, it was still pretty much optional. The decision was left to each individual as to whether or not they were going to fold under pressure and get that jab, so to speak. But a lot of people folded under pressure and got it. Not as many as they wanted, though. Some people, a lot of people actually didn't care about losing a job at that point. A lot of people stood firm and did not get it, and so, and even though it's actually, a lot of people are now, deceased because of it, it's not moving as fast as they would like. I guess after a while, the human body starts, the human body is way more durable than a lot of people really truly understand. And so because this thing has not really wiped out a good portion of the population, of the world's population, this is why they're starting to really make this thing mandatory now. No more optional, no more options for you. We're not gonna just threaten you with, you can't go to work or you can't go to certain stores or something like that. Right about now, they're pretty much going to roll this thing around again. And don't be surprised if another pandemic comes about, something else. Like I said, I guess this hasn't moved as fast for them as they would have liked. There's not enough people that have gotten buried behind that. So you're starting to really see the elite now. They're starting to ramp this up again. But this time, they're putting people in place that are going to make it absolutely mandatory for you to get it. And that's what you just heard there. And I'll get into who that is in just a second. But I'm going to read this here. This is from an individual named Stern Drew. His @ on x.com is @SternDrewCrypto. @SternDrewCrypto. Mandatory vaccinations are being rammed through in Europe right now. The globalist overlords in Europe just dropped the hammer. Mandatory vaccinations are no longer a conspiracy theory. They're shoving it down everyone's throat with new laws and penalties that will make your blood run cold. This is about total control, and that's exactly what Aaron Russo told Alex Jones on that now infamous video clip where he was speaking of the RFID micro chip being implanted in people, which is indeed the MOTB. This is about total control. They're testing the waters in Europe. First, because once the sheep there are locked in, the blueprint spreads like wildfire. Next stop, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and every other free, in quotes, Western nation that still pretends to value bodily autonomy. Your kids, your elderly parents, they want needles forced into arms, whether you like it or not. Refuse and face fines, job loss, travel bans, or worse. This is the Great Reset in action, turning citizens into compliant lab rats for their endless jab agenda. Big Pharma laughs all the way to the bank while government plays God with your DNA. The same elites who lied about everything before are back for round two, and this time they want it mandatory. That's just what I was mentioning throughout this particular video so far. Right about now they're trying to make it to where you don't have an option the next time around. They fear an awakened population that says no. Stand up now or watch your freedoms get injected away forever. The dominoes are falling. Europe today, your country tomorrow. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Right now we see that this particular lady right here, she's mentioning right now that these vaccinations have to be made mandatory in Europe. And that's exactly what you're seeing with the individual that I showed at the beginning of this particular video, Erica Schwartz, now being nominated by Trump. And she is one who has been mandating a lot of these things throughout her career. And so she is pro-mandate. She is pro-mandatory vaccination. So once again, the dominoes are falling. Europe today, your country tomorrow. Resist or submit, the choice is being made for you unless you fight back hard. The resistance is here at DNA on Chain. So who is that woman right there speaking? And that is her name is Ursula, and she is married to Heiko von der Leyen. And what she does is she buys COVID vaccines for the European Union. Her husband, this individual here, once again, Heiko von der Leyen, he actually runs a company that makes these particular vaccinations, these C-19 vaccinations. So right now, the ruling class elite, they are putting everyone in place right now that they have to put in place in order to speed this thing up here. They're trying to make sure that this time around, there is no gray area. There is no you have an option. The next time this thing rolls around, which is going to be very soon when they push this out again, this is going to be mandatory, or you're going to face penalties, as I just read a few moments ago. Penalties such as this time you'll get fines. It won't just be you'll possibly lose your job. Now you'll be getting a fine along with that, if you're unvaxxed. And so this is what this is all about. Total control. Once again, as Aaron Russo mentioned, this is what the elites now are pushing for. So I'm not going to make this video too long here. Just wanted to push some of this stuff out. Let's see what company he runs. Not that it's this is in Europe. So Heiko von der Leyen, the husband of European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, is the medical director of Orgenesis Inc., a U.S.-based biotechnology company. His role: he has served as the medical director of Orgenesis since December 2020. He previously served on its supervisory board. I'm not going to read all of this, just wanted to point out the company that he presides over. Or Genesis, once again, is a global biotech company working to unlock the full potential of cell and gene therapies in an affordable and accessible format at the point of care. In layman's terms, to sum that up, they're trying to give you the jab. There's no need to try to make it sound fancy. Just get straight to the point. And you want to vaccinate people with things that have not been proven to be effective against anything. So we all know to stay away from this type of stuff. Do not get this stuff ever. So I'm going to end this particular video here with 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And I'll read verses 11 and 12. Well, I'll start from verse 9. And I'll read this in the NLT, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, and I'll start from verse 9. This man will come to do the work of Satan with counterfeit power and signs of miracles. He will use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction. Right. Once again, they're trying to say that this is something that can help you, or this is something that can cure you, or something that you don't have to worry about this type of stuff. He will use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction. And you're going to have a lot of people that's going to still, even through all the evidence that they're pushing out there, that it has not been proven to do anything. It has not been proven to keep you safe or to keep you from actually getting C-19. C-19 is just like any other flu. It's just like any other, virus out there. It keeps mutating, So it's like, I've never gotten a flu shot in my entire life. But when I lived in Georgia, there was some people that I worked with, and every December they was getting a flu shot. And I'm like, man, there's like maybe 15,000 different strands of the flu, and it keeps mutating. So every time you get a flu shot, you probably only get vaccinated from like 8 different strands of it. There's still well over 14,990 something strands of the flu that you can still get. But people still get these things. I don't know. But and that's what this, he will use every kind of evil deception to fool those on their way to destruction because they refuse to love and accept the truth that would save them. A lot of times, people, man, they put a lot of their faith in these things. They trust these doctors. They trust these scientists, and so sometimes, I'm not even sure if people are actually fooled. Some people are legitimately fooled. Some people are just scared, and they get it. They feel like, hey, I don't want to lose my job, or, hey, I don't want to, this to happen to me, or, So Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai will cause them to be deceived. Salakia. So Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai will cause them to be greatly deceived, and they will believe these lies. They will be condemned for enjoying evil rather than believing the truth. Verse 13, subtitle, Believers should stand firm. As for us, we can't help but thank Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai for you, dear brothers and sisters loved by the Lord Yahweh. We are always thankful that Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai chose you to be among the first to experience salvation, a salvation that came through the Spirit who makes you holy and through your belief in the truth. He called you to salvation when we told you the good news. Now you can share in the glory of our Lord, Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Now end it there. I pray this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.